Hi, my name is Kelly Waymont. Join me while we make this beautiful paper leaf arrangement. In Silhouette Studio, we will start by opening the leaf design. So in the library, this is number 1472, and you can also find that in the Silhouette Design Store. So I'll double click to open it, and it opens pretty large and it has a piece we don't need. So we will drag the center vein off to the side or just delete it, we don't need it. And then because we're going to be adding this to branches of wire, we don't need this little stem here. So we're going to use the knife tool to get rid of that stem. I'm going to zoom in and grab my knife tool over here on the bottom left, and I want to make sure it's set to solid and not auto apply, and then I can just drag that knife across, make sure it goes across one edge to the other, and I can move my arrows to change that position a little bit, and then when it's ready I'll click apply, and now that piece we don't need, so we can delete it. I'll zoom back out so we can see the whole thing, and now I want to cut this leaf in 2 different sizes, and I need to fill my page so I can get as many pieces from this 12 by 12 page as possible. So I'm going to take one of these leaves and set the width to 2.13 inches. So make sure that in the scale up here in the quick access toolbar that's locked, and set the width to 2.13. And then I'm going to, over on the right hand side, I'm going to open my replicate panel. And I'm going to make a copy down. And this one I'm going to make a little bit smaller. So again, with my size locked up in the quick access toolbar, I'm going to type 1.77 for the width. And now I have the 2 different sizes of leaves I need. And I need, for this project, I need a front and a back that are mirrored. So I'm going to select both of those, and here on the, still on the replicate panel, I'm going to mirror to the right. And now I want to, just for simplicity, I'm going to change the color so I know one side of my leaves are going to be one color, and I'll just pick a yellow, and the other side of my leaves are going to be another color, so I'll just pick an orange. And now the goal is to just fit as many of these leaves on the page as possible. So I can fit a little bit more. I'm going to move those to the right, duplicate to the right, and slide them over. And then I should be able to fit these smaller leaves a little bit better. So I'm going to rotate, select those 2 smaller leaves and rotate around so they're upside down. And then at this point I'll just try and fit as many on here as possible. And when I've got some rows, I can, let's see, I can make hopefully 4 rows, 4 columns. And then it's just a matter of repositioning these so they're a little bit tighter on the page. Make sure I get them all on there. And then I would just want to make sure that I don't have any that are touching. And if you're really ambitious, you can make a couple more of the small ones. And we just want to have a matching front and back. So when you have those all on your page, we will go ahead and go to the Send tab. And I'm just cutting a pattern paper, so I'll choose a pattern paper medium and make sure I've got it set to cut, and I'm using my auto blade. If your blade is nice and sharp, you can probably use blade depth on 3. If it's a little bit dull, you might want to move your blade depth up to 4, and then your speed can be anywhere from 5 to 10, and force 30 is really good. So when you're sure that's ready and you've got your material loaded onto your mat and into your machine, you can go ahead and click Send. We'll go ahead and load our first piece of pattern paper. Now before I unload that completely, I like to make sure, just do a little peel up to make sure that has cut all the way through. And this one has. If it hasn't, you just leave everything as it is and click send one more time in the software. And as I'm removing this from the mat, I like to flip it over so the mat curls, which doesn't hurt it, instead of the paper, so my paper pieces stay pretty flat. And then our leaves, because of how we designed it in the software, we know that there's an equal number of larger leaves and shorter leaves, and then I'll just spend a little bit of time matching up the backs with each other. So I've got my opposites that will go back to back of the short ones and of the taller ones. So I think I'm going to show with the white, the actual assembly, making one branch. All right, so what we want to do with our branches is we're going to work in groups of 3. So we'll make, we can mix up the sizes a little bit, maybe one tall and 2 shorter ones, and 1 short and 2 taller ones, or even 3 of the same size. But we're going to work with groups of 3, and this bind wire is kind of a thin, flexible, paper covered wire, and so this I've just cut into some segments of 3 inches. And so we're going to start with just taking one set of these back-to-back leaves, and we'll put them so they match up together, and we'll just fold it in half lengthwise. So you're getting kind of a, what you would see as a grain line on a leaf. So we're just folding it in half, and then we will take the silhouette scraper tool and just kind of curl those away from that center fold on both sides. And so we'll do this with our leaves as we shape them. And then we're just going to sandwich in a piece of this wire in between. So we will add glue to one side, the inside of a leaf. Try not to be too glue heavy so it doesn't get soggy. And then I just add a little extra strip of glue right at that bottom section, because I want to take my bind wire and probably about 3/4 of an inch and just kind of swirl it in there so it gets glue covered on it. Then I'm going to take this other half of the matching leaf and press that together with the bind wire in the center. So that's putting each leaf on a stem. So while that glue is wet, we'll kind of reform those folds and give it a little curl. And we just want to make sure that that wire is stuck good in there. And the glue actually helps because it kind of softens up the paper a little bit briefly. And so you can get that all shaped in there. And so we'll just repeat this with all of our leaves, put them all on stems. Okay, so we've got 9 leaves, and this will be enough for a shorter branch. So we'll go ahead and start to show you how we'll put the branches together. All right, so to make a branch from our leaves, we're kind of going to work with 3 leaves at a time, and we'll have them on their own little wire stem that will come onto this main stalk. So I just have a piece of floral wire. This is about an 18 gauge wire, and you can go 20 gauge or a little thicker, a little thinner is fine. And it doesn't really matter what color this is because we'll be covering it completely. But we do want the brown stems and a brown floral tape to match pretty closely to the leaf stems so they can be attached to the floral wire. So I'll just start by we'll start one main stem, and we'll make sure that we've got floral tape that will cover that rough end of the floral wire. Now with floral tape, it won't stick to other things, but it will stick to itself as long as you've stretched it and warmed it up. So just give it a little tug to stretch it. Sometimes I'll stretch the entire thing and give it warm with my fingers. And we want to make sure that we cover that green stem. And so you're just kind of twist and pull the floral tape at the same time. And as you work your way down, you're going to add a leaf. So on this one, I don't want these other leaves to be taller than this leaf, so I just make sure they're a little bit lower down. And I can add a little bit more floral tape to the wire before I add the leaf if it's too tall at that point. That looks pretty good. So I'm just going to kind of have all of my leaf directions the same way, so the crease and the folds are all facing the same way. So I'll wrap that down a few times before I add the third leaf. And then continue stretching that floral tape as we move down the wire so that all gets covered in brown. And it doesn't have to go too far down, just a few inches, because we'll be adding the other branches onto that. And you can see that because everything's on a wire, it's really easy to bend it and manipulate it and have the leaves go whatever way we want. So let's get another wire, and this one we can probably do a little shorter. I'm going to cut this one in half for my other two groups. But we'll just follow that same process where we've got one leaf attached at the top, and we'll add the other two leaves as we wrap it down. Just make sure you're stretching and pressing that floral tape so it sticks. Okay, and time to add another leaf. These do not have to be perfectly symmetrical. You're just generally getting groupings of 3 on there. And it's okay if they stack up on top of each other initially, because we're going to be moving and bending those wires once we've got it filled in a little bit. So I'm just going to carry my floral tape down the wire and make that third grouping. And if you do have separate sizes, I like to do one by itself and then the two that are the same size as each other but different than this one, those two go below it. And it doesn't matter if you do the short one or the tall leaf as your tip. Once it's all in one big arrangement, you won't really notice the tiny differences from one set of leaves to another. do want to make sure they generally face the same direction with their creases though. All right, now you can do as many groupings of 3 as you want. You can make your branch as tall as you want. It's all up to you. But I do like a minimum of about 3 clusters on a branch. Okay, so now I've got my main long stem here. And so I'm just going to add this next. I'm going to bend it right about where it its thickness changes. And I don't want it to be taller than the first branch. And again, we'll attach it with floral tape. And I'm still looking for generally the creases to be going the same direction along my branch. Okay, and once I've worked this one down a little bit, I'll add the next branch. And again, just attach it with floral tape. So if you want a shorter stem, a shorter branch than what you see here, you could just trim off your wire so it's shorter like this. And if you want to make this a really long branch, then you would just add more of these groups of 3 all along the main stem. And on this one, I do want to make sure I get floral tape all the way to the bottom. And so this is up to you how large you make your branch. You can make several of these short branches. You can make mostly long branches. Use up all your leaves. However you want to make it. And then once you've got your branches made, you can give them a little bit, let's see, we'll trim this one off so it doesn't have to be so tall. If you feel like you need to thicken up your branch, you can add wire in as you go, or if you need to lengthen it, you can add more wire in and continue wrapping down. And then just to make it, give it a little more realism, you're just going to give some bends into the branch. You can bend it any direction. Just makes it a little more real. You can bend these wires. It just looks a little more natural if you've got some bends in there. And so you'll basically just fill in a bunch of floral wire with these groupings of 3 branches, and when you put them all together, they're going to look really pretty. So when you're ready to put them in a vase, if your vase is clear, I like to have something decorative like clear beads. If it's a solid colored vase, you can get away with something like rice. You just want something that's going to hold your branches in place. So as you make them, you're just going to put them in and kind of choose a design. And since this is all wire, you can continue to shape and rearrange. So you can have kind of an asymmetrical flow. You can make it big and triangular. You can see that there's a taller section and then some shorter sections. And then I've just mixed in these 3 colors all together, so it's got a really pretty variation throughout. So just make it the shape that you want and have taller and shorter. And once you've got it in a vase that has something to stabilize it, that's perfect.